like to welcome you to Beyond the Bar series powered by Cartiga. Thank you to our dynamic speaker, Andrew Finkelstein, for joining us today and sharing best practices. Andrew, well-known, well-respected. I am so delighted to have you here today. How are you?
I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I'm very excited and look forward to everything we're going to talk about.
We are going to talk about a lot, and I want to give our audience members the real. And when I say the real, the good, the bad, the ugly, the successes, maybe some of the low moments, let's talk about your mental health, acknowledging that you deal with some serious cases. Your profession is also a very serious one. So just want to talk about it all. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Before we get into just the past, let's just talk about you, Andrew, today. What does it feel like to be Andrew Finkelstein, the big attorney, big family guy?
Neither big attorney nor big family guy. Just really relaxed, very satisfied, very calm. I've always been very calm. As I always say, I have a lot of cortisol that runs through my brain. Very little bothers me. I do not sweat the small stuff.
You know, Andrew, for someone that is so humble and relaxed, where do you draw strength? Why do you find yourself to be so calm, cool, collective, no matter what the situation is?
Because the essence is understanding what I can control and not control. And over time and my life's experiences, I really focus solely on what I can control. And I mean that from every aspect of what I do. From my emotions, I am always in check with my emotions because I can control that, but I cannot control your emotions or anyone else's emotions. So if somebody is upset with something that I do, I can only control what I do in response to that, but I do not dwell on their mental state, how they feel about it. I can apologize if it's appropriate. I can explain if it's necessary, but understanding what I have control over versus what I don't have control over in every aspect of my professional life and personal life. And realizing that every action causes a reaction, but it's my action that may trigger a reaction. If it's a reaction that is negative, I'll do everything I can to modify my action to adjust that.
You know, Andrew, I know you to be a big family guy, a loving husband, a loving dad. Do you work to live or do you live to work?
Work is a 4-letter word, right? I do it because I love it. I'm not going to say because I have to do it. I definitely love it. But working allows me to be the best dad that I can be and the best spouse that I can be. I never think, I'm very future oriented. I'm always thinking about the future. And what I'm thinking about is rarely work. It is really
Good
about
for you.
Thanksgiving, vacation. I always have to have a vacation planned, something in the future. And that is what I always dwell on.
You know, it's interesting because someone said to me, lawyers, they're just not good at work-life balance. But you seem to have that figured out.
Then if lawyers aren't good at work-life balance, I'm the aberration. I have total balance, primarily because I have a family that understands my work-life balance. So they recognize that if I would always, given a choice between work and being with my family, I would always choose my family.
Good for you.
But my family also understands that primarily. And when I work, it's not because I choose not to be with them. It's out of necessity for my client. They know that there's a really important calling and responsibility for either my client or the people in my office.
Let's talk about your kids. Do your kids see you as the cool dad, or do they take you as the serious lawyer?
They definitely see me as the cool dad.
Good for you.
Because I tell them all the time I'm the cool dad. I will spot out the uncool dad and say, "Aren't you lucky?
I'm not
right?
that.
I'm not that." No, I certainly embarrass my kids as I'm supposed to, but and it's one of the greatest pleasures, love to go on vacation with me and my wife, because we're all about having fun.
So let's just talk about Lisa, your wife, and how she's complemented your career, acknowledging that there's so many hours that you have to invest into your day-to-day. How does she do it?
With an open mind and with peace, but it didn't start that way.
Okay.
We met in college, married after my first year of law school.
Wow.
Took some time between college and law school, but we both say we were way too young to get married. We're happy we are. We were 24. And during the beginning of starting my career, there was no issue if I would call up and say I'm on my way home and didn't quite make it home, because there was no obligations and it was easy.
Mm-hmm.
She had her own career. I had my career. I'm lucky she's a master's in social work. And then kids came.
Mm-hmm.
And then
changes everything.
And with the phone call, I'm on my way home. And then the phone would ring after I hang up with my wife that I'm on my way home, or somebody would come into my office, and that time from leaving the office to getting home, now there's other people that are dependent on that, which
mm-hmm.
are my kids that want to have dinner with me, and making dinner. I didn't appreciate what was going on at the house, and it could certainly build frustration and anger.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very, very lucky that my family, particularly my wife, understood that it wasn't a choice that I wasn't coming home, but rather a necessity.
Sure.
Because something came up.
Mm-hmm.
And it really reoriented her thought process on it. And we had a very simple solution, which is don't call until you're in the car.
Okay.
Right? And really...
Did you live up to that?
I'd always live up to that.
Okay.
And I just need instructions, right?
And you follow them.
I always follow them. So, and really the reason why my work-life balance is so terrific with my family, particularly my wife, is because she's learned the art of setting the bar very, very low, which makes it very easy for me to step over it. Because there was a time when she was setting the bar a bit higher,
mm-hmm.
and
you just the net result, up to it.
Well, the net result was her disappointment.
Yeah.
Right. And she, rather than choose to live in a world of hurt and a world of disappointment, she kind of reoriented herself to understanding that it wasn't intentional on my part,
mm-hmm.
That it was out of necessity. I was doing what I was doing,
mm-hmm.
And learned to get a nice balance associated with that.
So growing up, you saw your dad practicing law. What was that like, growing up in a home where you knew your dad was a lawyer? From day one, did you know that that's what you wanted to do?
I had no desire to be a lawyer. No interest in being a lawyer. My father always wanted me to be a lawyer. I always kid that when I was in the crib, he had the mobile or
mm-hmm.
that had little numbers on it, 33 and a third.
Uh-huh.
And that when I was playing basketball as a fifth, sixth grader. My number was 33 and a third. Subliminally, no, not really, but my father was always saying, be a lawyer, be a lawyer. And I really had no interest in being a lawyer.
What changed?
I went for business.
Okay.
I have a degree in finance and marketing. And then I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I worked after, I always worked during college, after college, and decided it was time to get a further education, another degree. And I met a billionaire, actually, a guy who used to, Larry Tisch, he used to own, his brother owned the Giants, he owned CNA Insurance, a whole bunch of Lowe's hotels. And I wasn't going to miss the opportunity to introduce myself to him and ask him a few questions, which I did. And
what was that moment like, going up to him? Did you have to build up courage?
No.
Or you just had the swag and you approached the billionaire?
Wouldn't call it swag, but what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
Right.
He's going to say no, or,
So
I
you've
always think
been fearless.
Always. Never, I've always been fearless. I would define that.
So how was that conversation with him?
It was pretty, introduced myself, told him where my station in life was at the time, and that I was troubled with a decision and was unsure what to do, whether I should go get an MBA or go to law school. And he immediately, didn't even think about it. Immediately, this is somebody was at the time, one of the wealthiest persons on the planet. Said, there's no doubt in my mind, for what you want to do, if you want to get into business, you're far better off with a law degree than a business degree. And if you take a look at the Fortune 500 CEOs, the vast majority of them at that time, I don't know about right now, but at that time, were lawyers. So he said, getting an MBA is easy. Getting a law degree sets you apart a bit. So that's why I chose to go to law school. And going to law school, I had no intention of ever practicing. I happened to go to Brooklyn Law, which is where my dad went. And it was nice having some of the same professors that he had. We would talk about it a bit. But it was never my intention to actually practice law.
So let's talk about your dad. He wanted you to be a lawyer from day one in the crib. And then you pick up the courage to say, all right, Dad, I'm going to be a lawyer. What was that conversation like with Dad?
I told him all along I had no intention of practicing law. I'm married 2 years in, meaning now in my third year of law school. I work for a law firm in Manhattan who are still good friends of mine. And they offered me a job, personal injury firm. And I had no intention of practicing. So I told them no, and called my dad and said, look, I want to get there really were very few joint JD MBA programs. Nobody was, certainly at Brooklyn Law, no business was recruiting for business positions, whatever it may be. So I didn't quite know how to get a job out of law school in an appropriate and business position. But I had to work because I'm married. And I called up my dad and said, I'm thinking about coming to work for you, but I'm not sure if I really should, if that's a good move, because your practice is up in Newburgh. I want to work in the city. A condition, and I say this jokingly, but a condition of my wife marrying me is that we wouldn't end up in the Hudson Valley.
Okay.
Right?
That was a condition.
She's from Jersey. We lived in Brooklyn.
Middle grounds.
We wanted to stay in the city and live in the city. And we just always saw ourselves being in the city. So I said, of course, I'm never moving home. Are you kidding me? That's an easy one. So I called my dad and asked, I'm thinking just to possibly come work for you, because if I come work for you, and I can tell you up front, it's for a very short window of time, because it's much easier to get a job when you have a job.
That's right.
So as soon as I start working, my resume is out looking elsewhere in some type of business. And I said, why don't we get together and have lunch about it? We'll do it next week. He says, sure, no problem. And the very next day he called me up and said, my partners are so happy. Why are they so happy? Because you're joining the firm. I'm like, join it? What are you talking about? Oh, no. I said, we're going to have lunch. We're going to talk, see if that's the right move.
Oh, the decision was already made.
He said, it's the right move. That there's nothing to talk about. That's the right move. So then I had to break it to my wife, and she was not, but she's happy now, right? And now that we raised our family, and very happy now. But at that moment, it was somewhat challenging.
So Lisa, from day one, has always been someone who has complemented and has been able to pivot. So it sounds like Lisa saw into the future. So when you talk about those expectations, I wonder if it really came from you or if it really came from Lisa just being super supportive of you. What do you think?
Oh, I couldn't imagine anyone being more supportive of me.
She sounds like she's your number one cheerleader.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
Andrew, I want to talk about your dad a little bit. You said yes to working with your dad, or I don't know if he said yes first, but then you said yes. Let's talk about the lessons that you've learned from your dad that still holds true and just doesn't get old that you learned from your dad.
My dad taught me a lot of lessons. And no, I can't really prioritize them. But one of the best lessons he taught is a very simple phrase that I don't even think he realized I embraced it as a lesson. And it's yesterday's news. I came to the practice straight from law school. The day after I was admitted, I was picking my first jury. Really? No training, just threw me right in. And I tried in the first 5 years, I don't know how many dozens of cases. There had been weeks where I would pick 3 juries in 1 week. Practicing law was much different than it is now.
Sure.
Judges allowed you to try cases. Judges allowed you to go out and pick and really push your case forward. And I certainly didn't win every case. And after every single case that I lost, immediately all I heard was, it's yesterday's news. Wow. Move on to the next one. Always looking forward. So he also taught me the importance of hard work. Yeah. But above all, it's having a sense of humor. My father, I don't know how he did it, but he had a joke at all times for all occasions, which was topical. May have been inappropriate, didn't bother him, but it was always topical. And I don't know how he remembered all of these jokes, but he could take whatever was going on in a particular situation and roll right into a joke. So it always taught me subliminally there should always have a sense of humor about things.
Looking back, and as you reflect on this moment, do you feel that you're living your purpose?
I do. But I wouldn't define my purpose as being a lawyer. But I am living my purpose. I just think my purpose is just to do as much as I can to help as many people as I can. Happens to be through the vehicle of law, but it's also through many other opportunities that I've sought out. I view my responsibility to the people who work in my firm as an opportunity to help them, help their families.
And I just want to talk a little bit about your legal and professional journey to success. So your dad established the first firm in 1959. So it already had its reputation. You knowing that, how did that shape you day one starting on the job? Did you look at the role as hey, this is going to be easy because dad is here? Or was it more challenging because dad is here too?
Joining my dad's firm, I knew going in that the perception of everybody there who did not know me would be, oh, this is just
the son
who's going to ride the coattails. And if anybody really knows me, I am as far from the opposite of that as you can imagine. So going in, I realized actions speak louder than words.
Right.
I spent no time trying to convince anyone what I would do or anything associated with that I deserved anything. I knew that I had to earn it and show it through my actions. And I am proud to say, I'm not embarrassed to say, I'm proud to say, anybody who has ever worked with me will, no matter, one thing they will consistently say is that I work very, very hard. Hard work doesn't mean it's not fun. Hard work doesn't mean you don't enjoy it. Hard work doesn't mean that you can't laugh and joke around during it. Hard work means you're committed and will do everything that's necessary to accomplish the goal that you need to accomplish. But along that path, you can have fun doing it.
Did anyone question your commitment
Never.
early on?
Never.
Did anyone challenge you because you were the son?
Never. Never, because when I joined the firm, my first office was a mailroom cart. We were out of offices, and I literally walked around the office every day with my cart looking for an open office, and that's where I would go. Wow. I firmly believe in servant leadership, that my responsibility and job, and it was from day one, was for the people who work at the firm to make their job and life easier. They weren't there to make my job any easier. That's my responsibility, and I could do that.
So let's talk about building a brand and maintaining a brand. Two different things. How have you managed, thinking about today, right, and carrying that legacy, to build the brand and just build notoriety? Is there a secret sauce?
There's no silver bullet to any of this. No magic elixir that's going to automatically get you to where you want to go. It's hard work.
Yeah.
And when it comes to a brand and building a brand, it'll go back to choices and being in control. Either you control your brand or you allow others to control your brand. And I am, I guess in talking about this, a bit of a control freak. I defined what I wanted our brand to be and then created around that. And other lawyers don't spend necessarily the time or energy in the initial phase of defining what they want their brand to be. And it is not necessarily the market forces that drive what your brand should be, meaning you can't satisfy everyone. You can't be the brand for everyone. You have to define which niche it is that you want to practice in and perfect and excel. And then once you define that niche, how can you best serve those people and define around that? I have advised many lawyers, the best way to mediocrity is to do everything.
Andrew, walking down memory lane, I want to talk about the moment that you got a taste of success. And for many of us, success looks very different. What does that look like for you?
Success came. I don't even think of success when I think of business or law. Success is all about the relationships I have. Success is clients calling me years after I've represented them. Success is my best friend from law school calling me, or I call him and we reconnect. That's success. Success is walking in my house every night and just having that safe place, knowing it's totally safe. Success is going down and going out with my 24-year-old daughter and just going out drinking with her and having fun as if we're longtime friends. No friction. That's success. And when is the first time that happened? Probably when I was a boy at an all-boys sports camp.
What happened then?
I can't point to any one thing, but connecting with, those are still some of my closest friends, just growing and evolving and having fun.
You know, some people struggle with connecting with people and building relationships. From the moment I met you, Andrew, it felt like I have known you for many, many years. And I always say this, and you know this about me, you're like the uncle we all want, never had. Why do you think you have that effect on people?
I don't consciously think I do, but if I was to sit and think about how I create a safe atmosphere for people, is because I look them right in the eyes and I welcome them into my world by asking them about their world. And I'm always vulnerable. I'm happy to share my experiences and my perspective on things, with the caveat always that I'm not judgmental. I really think that because I'm not judgmental at all, and the lack of judgment empowers people to feel comfortable. And I'm intentionally not judgmental because, frankly, I really don't care. And when not in a negative way, but in a dispassionate way.
Right.
I can't understand what drives other people, because there's always a story behind what drove them to do what they did. So I just think it's being non-judgmental and being vulnerable.
So let's just talk about your legal side of success. Sadly, you have surrounded yourself with lots of tragedy, your clients suffering from catastrophic injuries. Let's talk about you protecting your mental space. How do you do that?
I compartmentalize very, very well. And there's a huge part of me when I'm dealing with somebody who's had a catastrophic event that two things. Always under the surface, I say, thank God that's not me or somebody I love.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I say, but if it was, I'd want me there to do it for him. And what are all the things that I would want if I was in their shoes, or a family member was in their shoes and they were talking to me? And I tried to deliver that.
Did you always have that instinct? I would want someone like me with tenacity representing, if it was someone in my shoes?
Always. I take it very, very seriously. This is not a joke. This is not fun and games. This is when somebody is totally relying upon you and everything that you do to help them. It's a weighty undertaking. And either you have the courage to rise up to that undertaking, right, and you're going to do everything that's necessary, and don't allow fear to prevent you from doing what's right. Because one thing that is always been my moral compass is I can't control the outcome, but I can control the effort and energy that I put in. And I haven't always had the best outcomes, but I don't take it personally as long as I know I've given every effort and opportunity. So it's not a personal reflection on myself, my clients, what necessarily the outcome is. Of course, I always want the best.
Sure.
And I'm proud to say the best happens way, way, way more than not the best outcome. But anybody who has been doing this as long as I've been doing it and has been in the battles that I've been in, you got to take your knocks.
So talking about taking knocks, your team, they also take some knocks, and they share the same view that you have, that grit, tenacity. Do you have an eye for identifying talent, or is it a setting that you just create in your office?
Well, I certainly don't hire everybody in my office, okay? But one thing that I do look for and am very vocal about is you better have a thick skin. Because the essence of what my firm is about moving forward in a positive way. And in order to move forward in a positive way, you better be able to hear constructive criticism. And one can hear constructive criticism if they know the motive and the source of that constructive criticism is intended to help and it's not personal. So what I do when I personally hire somebody, that's the characteristic that I am looking for. And I have a whole series of questions that enlighten me on that. I need to be able to have the comfort that I can engage in a mature, professional conversation where we are constructive about one another, where it is not understood, heard, or told from a personal perspective, meaning it's about you as a person. The presumption always is that you're acting in the best interest, first of our client and second of the firm. Now, as long as the belief is that the motive is pure, the choice may not be the right choice, but that's okay, right? And we have to learn from making that wrong choice. But there's a significant problem if that motive is not pure. So the people who are with me understand that. I preach it all the time. I remind people of that all the time. And if people can't handle that constructive comment, it's the wrong organization for them.
So you set the tone up front. I do want to talk about just your leadership style for a moment. Nowadays, and Andrew, you and I, we both know this, people don't stay with an organization for more than 12 months, 24 at max. It's always what's in it for me, or the sense of entitlement. The workforce, the face of the workforce is very, very different. I had the opportunity, and I call it blessing, to meet with some of your leadership team members. Talk about 24 months. Those people have been there for over 2 decades, some of them. Why do they stay with you? And I always say this, Andrew, before you answer that. People leave people, not organization. What is it about you that has allowed for people to say, this is my home? Andrew cares about me and he has empowered me.
Well, I'm proud to say, from a professional perspective and my firm's perspective, we have a little over 100 people who have been with the firm in excess of 20 years.
Wow.
We just had a celebration of a woman who's with us 50 years. We have 10 people with us over 40 years. We have 35 or so people with us over 30 years and about 50 people over 20 years. right in that neighborhood. To somebody to be with us 15 years is nothing. And why is it? And I ask myself, why is it? Especially with such a opportunity to find work elsewhere. And again, it's not a silver bullet. There's no one aspect of it, but it's something that I take great pride in, which is our culture. And we measure people. Are they either culture carriers or culture killers? And in order to be a culture carrier, you have to understand what our culture is.
Right.
And our culture is clearly defined and reinforced. It's care, compassion, and concern for our clients, our colleagues, and our community. Care, compassion, and concern. Those are the characteristics of people that we're looking for. But who are they giving that care, compassion, and concern for? For our clients, first and foremost, our colleagues who we work with, and our community. So we give back to our community a lot. I allow people, or I shouldn't really say allow, encourage people to take time during the business day, and we pay to give back to the community. The expectation isn't to do it on their weekend time or when they're not working. They should be doing it when they're working. People donate their time to the various, and they can select whatever organization that they want for over a period of time, as long as it's a not-for-profit, and can't be donating my time to my brother because we're going fishing. Sure. It's got to be a real organization, because that when you give back to the community, it really heartens your soul and ground you as to what we're really about, which is representing people from our community. And then with respect to our colleagues, it lays a foundation as to how we have to treat one another. The simple truth is nobody wants to be coming to work every day. But since we all have to do it, I want to do it with people I like. Now, do I have to agree with them on a political standpoint? No. Do I have to agree with them on a personal level on what they enjoy versus what I enjoy? Definitely not. But what I do have to ensure is that they treat me and everybody around me with the appropriate dignity and respect everybody deserves. So I do not tolerate anybody who is acting inappropriately, and everybody knows it, and everybody rises above it. And it's just not my responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility to enforce our culture across the board. Now, in order to ensure that this happens routinely and regularly, everybody does their own individual self-assessment and annual review, where the measurements really are on care, compassion, and concern, how they've demonstrated it. Their supervisor evaluates on that. Are they culture carriers, culture killers? I personally send out a review. It's an anonymous review to everybody about myself. I want to know, am I living up to that standard? I certainly don't rise above it. I have to be held equally as accountable as anybody else. But the most important thing I think we do is we survey our clients. For every touch point a client has in my office, we specifically ask them by name, are you being treated with care, compassion, and concern? So it's easy just to have those words roll off the tongue, but actions speak louder than words, and you have to walk the walk. So when people realize that they are working in an organization that's so committed to respect and dignity, it's a place that they realize is where they want to be. And I've had people leave, and I've had a lot of people come back. I have no problem. That I will always say.
And you invite them back happily?
I always say this is America. If you believe you can do better somewhere else, I wish you good luck, right? Go for it. I would never hold somebody back. But if it isn't quite what you think it is, you're welcome to come back. Certainly don't do that with everybody.
Sure.
But I can give off the top of my head, a list of people who I've welcomed back, and they are the best people to welcome back because they just share what
appreciation.
They share, hey, it's pretty good here, right? The other benefit of being an organization that started in 1959 is the long-term relationships that form with your colleagues, and some of those relationships that have been formed have been more than professional, meaning several people have gotten married in the organization. So although we're relatively large, it's truly a family firm. We have a lot of husbands and wives, and we have a lot of parent and children who work in the firm.
Wow. Very unique. Andrew, I see you light up when you talk about your company culture. It obviously means a lot to you. Then you talked about people that will kill a culture. How do you put your foot down and you deal with that type of individual? Because that is very dangerous to have someone that is a culture killer.
So the only thing that separates law firms, or really businesses, from one business to another is the culture of the organization. Lawyers, certainly lawyers who do personal injury work, we all do the exact same thing. We gather information and we provide information. Some may do it more efficiently than others. And the outcome may be different, but at the end of the day, if you distill away all those activities, it's the same core activity. So the only thing that separates the organizations is the culture of the organization. And the leader of the organization has the obligation to set the culture, define it, and make sure everybody lives by it. And I am quite rigid when it comes to that. And if people cannot get on board with the culture of the organization, then this is not an organization that they should be at. And frankly, it was the most difficult aspect professionally of what I've ever done, which relates to my brother. My brother practiced with me for years, and ultimately he was a culture killer. And ultimately, he left the organization not on good terms. And when he left, everybody in the organization understood the reason why I had to do that. Because I can't allow one person to have to be a culture killer. It's as simple as that. When he left, not one lawyer, not one paraprofessional, not one support staff left, not one client left, which was very sad for me, but it demonstrated to everybody how important it is.
Andrew, I can't believe that you had to put yourself in the situation where you're acknowledging that a family member is a culture killer. That to me means taking it to the next level, and you drew the line in the sand and said, unacceptable. Do you believe that your staff had a greater level of respect for you post your brother?
Honestly, no. I think that it didn't surprise them at all, because I always walked the walk. And I may have been given it more time and attempted more coaching and effort to cure because of the family relationship, but it kept degrading. And it got to a point where I realized that it was not repairable. And once there was a clear understanding it was not repairable, it was evident what had to happen. And so to answer your question, I don't think anybody in my organization who knows me well, did I get any greater level of respect because they expected that of me.
Talk about the relationship with you and your brother today.
Family business is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from that. The one thing that I share frequently with anybody who I learn practices with a family member, and the error that my father made was, which we didn't know existed, was failure to bring on a family business consultant before, really at the initiation when everybody joined. Because what happened was, although I made efforts to set forth expectations and responsibilities for everybody's role, it broke down. We didn't have a structure in place that would have been in place. And a lot of animosity was generated and created that should never have occurred. So I encourage anybody who's involved in a family business, take the time up front to bring an outside professional in to help you work through, because it's the same issues that you find in business, but they're magnified because of the family relationship. Mm-hmm. And there are proven ways to avoid what happened to my situation.
Any regrets?
Regrets suggest that I would have done something differently. And in hindsight, specifically associated with practicing with my father and my brother, I don't have regrets.
Why do people stay so long at the firm?
Aside from treating people professionally and presuming positive intent, it's a core understanding of what gives people job satisfaction. And it's autonomy, mastery, and purpose, particularly with professionals. Autonomy, I'll define it first, it's mastery. That's how I view it. And on my computer screen, I only have one yellow sticky that has those three words: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Because I always want to be reminded when people are talking to me, what area are they talking to me about? And I'll explain what I mean by that. And I didn't create this. I've read about this and have found it to be true, that particularly for professionals, and where I made a tremendous leap is I used to have the belief that a professional, because they are professional, they're a lawyer, will invest in themselves. And if they choose not to, then that shame on them. And that was the wrong thought process. It was really a recognition that it's partially my responsibility to help them invest in themselves, because they may not know quite what to do because they're busy being a professional. And I need to go out and find what are the right courses, what's the right material, and help them and assist them in building that mastery. Because once you have that mastery and really are quite competent in your skill set, it's really important from management. My perspective is to give autonomy.
Sure.
That's what people want. Because I've mastered this, do you not believe I should have the autonomy? And that third component is purpose. Do I've mastered something and have autonomy in something that is purposeful? And there are other things that are equally as purposeful, but I don't know what is more purposeful other than helping somebody, right? And that's really the purpose of what we do. So if you understand that mastery, autonomy, and purpose, and you actually deliver on that, the ultimate thing that you get back is trust. And when people trust you as the leader of an organization, that's really what your goal is.
Mm-hmm.
And I would suggest that if you focus on those three elements in when somebody is asking questions, well, are they really asking because they're not comfortable in the area? And is it now your obligation to invest in them so that they have mastery of that topic?
Andrew, I'll say this. When someone has trust in a relationship, magical, powerful things transpires. I know this about you and your leadership team. You have a C-suite team, many of which are comprised of women that look and sound like me. Why is diversity so important to you?
I really shouldn't say this. Diversity isn't important to me. I just look at who's the best person. And they happen to be diverse, fantastic. But I've read a lot about diversity, and I do believe diversity is very important. But that isn't diversity as a final place is not the right viewpoint in my estimation.
Mm-hmm.
It is finding the best people,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully they are diverse, that's how I ended up with so many women, because I could care less.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really good, that's all I'm looking for. And when I say really good at carrying forward on our culture.
That's right.
Okay. It's not necessarily the good at the work, because as long as you have the right attitude and the right culture, I'll send you to courses to build that mastery so that you get better at the underlying work. It starts with me with attitude and culture.
I want to talk about your Chief Marketing Officer, Danielle. 20 years ago, she mentioned that she had a conversation with you about the brand, and she did not want to be like the other law firms, ambulance chasers. And she pushed back and she said, Andrew, this is not the path for us. And you said to her, you're right. What would you recommend? And you allowed for her to put together a plan. Talk about that moment when you allowed one of your C-suite people 20 years ago, when it was very common to do those things, to just go the other route.
Pretty simple. If I'm not going to listen to that advice, what do I have her for? Mm. Right? So it's interesting. I did not realize that she looked at that as a milestone or an important event. To me, it was just, why I have her, to take that information, and I have no problem following other people's recommendations. So I think it was a wise and sage suggestion and worked out. But I also will say I'm very much of a risk taker. And I am very optimistic that it will work out. Mm-hmm. But at the same token, and I know this sounds counterintuitive, I also have no problem quitting. Right? I will try something, give it its best shot. But if it doesn't work, it's a sunk cost. I've learned from it and move on to the next one. So it was not difficult to follow that recommendation, knowing that we could always pivot.
I want to talk about the quitting component. Is that tied back to your dad? That's yesterday's news.
I believe so. It's also a recognition that quitting is really sometimes the best mm-hmm. alternative. Mm-hmm. That the suggestion, and we have a culture in this country, you never quit, right. quit. And that's where you find a lot of people miserable in doing things they don't like, because right. they're under the misperception, I'm going to stick to it. And they tell themselves a story, that even though I'm miserable, I'm not going to be one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, one of those who are happy and get satisfaction out of their job because they recognized they're not happy in what they were doing and they quit and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I try to never do are things I don't like doing.
So is that how you protect your mental, by saying, if I don't like it, just not going to do it?
Definitely. If I'm not having fun, I'll finish whatever the task is, but I'll make sure I don't do that again. A good example is a line of cases. I at one point in my career was doing a lot of mass tort work. I was chair of a few different MDLs, on different MDLs. And as I was doing it, I realized I did not enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I don't do any, and my firm does no MDL work. Not because it wasn't profitable, not because we weren't successful. I just didn't like it.
The fulfillment wasn't there.
So what I was lacking was purpose,
mm-hmm.
right? I didn't feel the purpose.
So Andrew, as you talk about purpose, you recently wrote a book, and the book is called I Hope We Never Meet. And it's focused around clients and their tragedy. And one of the stories that I would like for you to talk about is Lily and her mom and brother and that tragedy. And let's just talk about why the book. Why did you write the book? What was the purpose behind it?
The purpose behind writing the book really was to have an opportunity to communicate to all of my clients when they hire us. We give them that book. And I am a firm believer that regardless of who in my firm is individually representing the client, it should all be the same level of service. Mm. And that level of service relates to educating our clients. And that education of clients comes through storytelling. And I personally handle several cases, and I always view my responsibility to show the client or family member that the future will be better, that they're in it. The worst of their time is right now, certainly shortly after an event. And I tell stories, and COVID gave me the opportunity to sit down mm-hmm. and actually put them on paper and put that book together. And the purpose of it was to share all those stories with clients and hopefully be a little educational along the way. And I just thought of lots of the clients and cases that I've handled and the lessons learned from them. And majority of the lessons learned is that the human spirit is a very, very strong thing, very hard to break. It can be broken for mm-hmm. sure. But I just took some of the worst cases that we've handled, and I just cannot believe these clients and how they get through it. And I just wanted to show other clients who are going through it that others have made it through. And the case that you talk about, where a mom and a brother watch their younger sister and their daughter mm-hmm. killed right in front of them. I just could not imagine the tragedy, and that they relive it frequently. But they taught me that although they relive it, they've learned to cope and deal and make something positive as a result. And wasn't that specific client, but there's another client who has put together a foundation for anybody else who has suffered such a tragedy They provide counseling services and a support group to try to make something positive out of the tragedy that they lived.
Your business model is about caring. When you hire your lawyers, is that a big component? Are they caring people that you look at when hiring an attorney for your firm?
Absolutely. That's if they are struggling themselves to be compassionate to their clients, how can they communicate that compassion to a jury? Or the client is coming to us for help.
Right.
And if they're not delivering a compassionate ear, then we're not delivering the services that we promised that we would. So I'm proud to say that all the lawyers that work with me for an extended period of time are definitely compassionate.
Andrew, I quote from your book, "I often meet people on the middle of their worst days of their lives." How do you cope with connecting with that individual across the table from you?
First, listening. The majority of the time, they just want to tell the pain that they're going through. Second, being non-judgmental and being realistic. My job isn't to make them feel better. Mm-hmm. My job isn't to fix the situation. It's to listen and to try to communicate that in the future, I don't know when it'll happen, it does get better, because you can put things in perspective. It is the worst of it right now. I'm going through a Rolodex of different clients where this has happened, where what I do is just tell the stories that are in that book and say, let me just share with you, you're not the only one, because everybody feels isolated and on an island. And that's one of the worst places to be. Mm-hmm. And I often share that they aren't. I have many clients who have always offered up to be a listening ear to any future client and say, look, I was there. This is what I went through, and it sucks. And what from wrongful death cases to paraplegia cases to loss of limbs, you feel like this is a mountain that I cannot climb. And when you can speak to other people who are already at the top of the mountain and down the other side, and they can show you the path, it's much different because I haven't taken that path. But when you can speak to somebody who's taken that path and they help you through that process, it's quite helpful. And that's part of what my job is. And that's what I wrote the book about.
Andrew, you talk about your clients climbing up the mountain. It can be very lonely climbing up the mountains in a moment where tragedy, darkness, a season of sorrow is surrounding you. You give up your personal cell phone to your clients. Most lawyers in the business, they say, nope, my time is my time. Why do you do that?
I give my personal cell phone because I view myself, if I'm that client, I want my lawyer's cell phone. It's as simple as that. I have never had a client who has abused it, and I am always honest. If a client calls me and it's not an appropriate time, I simply say, I can't talk to you right now. How about, and we schedule a call. It's very simple. I am not at the burden of my clients. I am at their disposal, but it's a two-way street. They have to recognize that my life isn't exclusively this, but they can call anytime. I have clients who call nights and weekends. It doesn't bother me because I simply say, now's not a good time. Let's do it at this. A lot of times it is a fine time. I don't mind. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But it is just being transparent with the client. It's not a problem. But I give it so that, because I would want that.
Mhm.
The person, if I was through those tragedies, I would want to have access.
On the other side, I've seen photos on your phone of clients that are sharing great moments post their tragedy. You're able to connect with people even after the job has been done. Where does that come from? Where people still want to connect with their attorney?
It's a relationship, right? The relationship doesn't get turned on and turned off like a light switch. It's people that you learn a lot about and develop feelings towards, and it doesn't stop when the case is over.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to stay in touch and know what's going on. And I've gone to prior clients, their weddings, and when their kids have had particular events, I've gone to.
That's amazing, Andrew. Yeah. So you have a big heart. You've had a wonderful career, ups, downs, seems like many ups. The Andrew today, what do you say yourself that you wish you knew when you first started?
There's nothing. Why do I say that? Because it's the journey to get to where I am, which has been the fun part of it. Mm-hmm. If I knew today what I knew back then, it'd be boring.
And you probably wouldn't have done it.
I wouldn't have done it. Mm-hmm. Right? It's always the challenge. So there's no great, I've said it earlier, there's no great silver bullet. Mm-hmm. It's the process of life and going through things that make it enjoyable.